switched from newer trains to older ones 6 or 5 years ago, so before the pandemic, it was a whole big swap with the EFNR. Just so you know, I'll call the trains by their contract number. So the quote-unquote new ones are the 160s, they entered service 19 years ago by this point, and the old ones are the 46s. I'm gonna leave out the 68s since I actually do like them. Now, the main problem with the 46s is that they've been running for 50 years, and after running for 50 years, they're not exactly in the best of shape as you can imagine. Plus, they're 75 feet long, longer than the 60-foot standard for the B division. They were explicitly built for express routes and work well on the I and D division of the B division, which is why they used to be mainstays on the F and A. On the A until very recently, when they brought in the 211s to retire them. On the other hand, for the rest of the B division, or the BMT division, the 75-footers aren't even allowed on the BMT Eastern division. Now as for the BMT Southern division, they don't run as well, due to some questionable engineering. This leads into the next problem. So, the queue runs on Brighton, which is infamous for its sporadic stop spacing. You can imagine the amazing speed the queue has on Brighton Local as a result. You know what, in fact, I've measured the distance between every single station south of Prospect Park on Google Maps, and this is the average. About 1,708 feet, or 0.3235 miles, about a 6.5 minute walk at 3 miles per hour, which is the average. Now that seems okay, but just keep in mind most stops are, in reality, spaced apart lower than the skewed average. Of course, stop spacing be damned, the queue is just plain slow through Brighton Local. In fact, I would describe it as the most miserable local in terms of speed, but that's just my bias. Now, after Prospect Park, credit where credit is due, the queue has its faster portions. The most consistently fast would absolutely be Prospect Park to 7th Avenue. There is no potential for shenanigans like on Broadway Express, so operators floor it through the 1.1 mile gap. Although, if you look on Google Maps, this is only because trains run under Flatbush Avenue through the middle of Prospect Park. So a station in between would be very pointless, even by BMT standards. Speed's okay through Atlantic, but after Atlantic, the train has to take it slow due to tight curves before and into Dekalb. The difference between the 60-footers and the 75-footers is the most apparent here. The queue headed into Dekalb much more smoothly in 2019. You know what, even then, what the hell was the BMT smoking with this track layout? I don't see or know any good reason to have the track layout like that. My best guess is that the BMT wanted 4th Avenue local trains to go over the Manhattan Bridge and all Brighton trains to go through the Montague Tunnel. That's what it seems in the track layout. Now, what that means in normal terms is basically the R heading over the bridge, and the Q going through the tunnel and Financial District. Anyway, we know what comes after Dekalb. Keeping it short, yes, it's a mess, with trains having to cross in front of each other. It's not as bad on the Manhattan-bound side, or northbound side, but the southbound Coney Island-bound side is horrible. And you can feel it with how long trains have to stop in the southbound direction. Compared to the northbound side, the N has to crawl onto some cuck track to merge with the D, and the B has to take a fairly lengthy switch over to the Brighton track. On the topic of Dekalb, I'm not going to go into any of the interlining, such as sending the D to Brighton for no good reason other than to recreate a service routing that was changed before my time to specifically serve West End riders. I digress. Let's head to Manhattan. Going over the Manhattan Bridge is slow, but it does skip all of Lower Manhattan. Afterwards, Broadway Express is okay. The queue hits decent, sometimes good speeds all around, especially on the downtown track, but expect the most mediocre speed you've ever witnessed on the northbound track out of Canal Street to Union Square. This is my personal experience, you might not get that every time. Of course, this is all unless you're behind an N train, then expect slow speeds and frequent stopping. This is all cause the worthless excuse of a subway line has to cross it from 2 other local train lines, the RNW. 2 entire lines. Not very frequent lines, but still 2 entire lines. You know what, hell, it's so bad behind an N, I've seen people walking faster over the bridge. As of late, the N train takes the well-deserved dishonor of the worst train line for me. Over the R, yes, even over the R, and excluding the Z, since it barely exists anyway. So yeah, that's about it. As for 2nd Avenue, it's fine. There isn't really anywhere else to branch it off from besides Broadway Express. Either way, the queue could be, and it was, so much better. But I just cannot excuse how utterly miserable of a local Brighton is for me. At least it's got good views, I guess. Anyway, I'll end the video here. Drop a like, sub, whatever, if you enjoyed this new style video. And as for what's next, well, Brighton has an express.